Hey there, welcome to the Grind and Flow podcast. Real quick, if you would, please take a hot minute to follow us on your favorite podcast app. We're also on YouTube and Instagram at Grind and Flow Official. In the podcast content world, this is a zero-cost way for you to say hello and help others find the show. Your follows and comments are crucial in summoning the favor of the algorithm gods. Thanks for your support. On today's episode of Grind and Flow, I'm happy to present the artist you're hearing now, Atlanta's own Corey Johnson, also known as OkCello. And it should be obvious, he is absolutely more than just okay at the cello. Had to make that joke, sorry, not sorry. He continues to build acclaim with immersive performances that are hard to describe. OkCello is a composer, storyteller, looper, which allows him to record parts on the fly and play along with them in real time. He melds technology, craft, and improvisation in emotionally impactful ways. He's got a new album coming out in June, Funny How Things Work Out, which I am jealous that should be the name of this podcast. So many of my conversations here are about the overlap of intention, the grind, with the randomness of the flow. OkCello has composed for the stage with Atlanta's Alliance Theater and also opened for Maxwell, and recorded and or performed with India.Arie, De La Soul, and Big Boy of Outkast. But here's the thing, Corey holds what I think is a unique bond with his instrument, a connection that did not come until later in life, well after decades of performing, with other rich journeys as an educator, writer, and film producer. In addition to this origin story, we discussed valuing the gift of an audience's attention and how artistic pursuits can feed your soul and enhance your life skills, even if it's a hobby. So here we go with OkCello.
My name is Corey Johnson. I'm a cellist, I'm a composer, an improviser, a storyteller, and my work is largely informed by my personal relationship to the African diaspora. Looping is a really big part of what I do. It allows me to create the experience of an ensemble of cellos on stage. And then I kind of use a kind of interest in contemporary music storytelling, right? So like bass lines and beating on my cello and melodies that are kind of not pop necessarily, but certainly of the last 100 years, to kind of put together these pieces that I then endow with stories. Essentially that's what I do. I'm lucky that I've been doing it now for about 10 years. And actually the kind of anniversary, the 10th anniversary comes up in December 2014. And I didn't imagine that this would be a thing that I would be investing in for quite as long, and that it would have the return on investment that it has had, more than anything artistically and spiritually. Certainly it also has been a career, but it has been the engine for a great deal of discoveries, personal discoveries that I didn't anticipate. And I'm just really grateful that I get a chance to play music and get in front of audiences and talk with people like you about music and creativity and story and discovery.
When I first heard your story, and I'd like to get into that,
Yeah.
your origin story,
Yeah.
it also illuminates your unique relationship with your instrument.
Yeah.
Tell me about those things.
Yeah. So I started playing the cello when I was 6. But I don't know that I have like this really amazing, I knew I wanted to play. I didn't dream about it or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I didn't know what a cello was until I got a chance to go to the organization that provided lessons for every instrument in the orchestra. And the way that I ended up playing the cello was that it was the only class with space. So in some ways, I think maybe circumstance
The universe was telling you something.
selected the cello for me. Maybe the cello selected me. But you know, I was a really agreeable, easy kid. Like so, whatever, I'll play whatever. I think I was just, my mom told me I'm going to play an instrument. I like playing the cello. I'm doing pretty well at it. Let's keep doing it.
And keep doing it, he did. By the time Corey reached his teens, he was good enough that a teacher recommended he devote all his time to school and cello. 3 hours of practice daily. But by age 17, Corey decided to move on. In what would be the first of several instances, he would put down the cello. Corey went on to college and eventually focused on being a teacher, parent, writer, and film producer. Playing the cello was just something he did. Until, dun dun dun, a milestone birthday. Then you turned the big 4-0.
So then at 40, this was in the middle of maybe towards the end. I didn't know it was towards the end, but in the middle of my film making stage. I had left the classroom to produce this film, again, that you didn't see. And things were beginning to kind of look a little dodgy, like financially. I think I was I left the classroom in 2011, this was 2014. I was teaching cello lessons. I was still working as a contracted employee with a school where I used to teach doing DEI work. But the film thing just wasn't working. It wasn't panning out the way I thought. And it looked like I was going to either have to write a film about zombies or vampires, or I was going to have to go back to the classroom. Strangely enough, I loved the classroom. I still love the classroom. I kind of sometimes dream about going back. But at the time, I wasn't ready to go back. It would have felt like failure. And then the cello's like, aha, we've been waiting all this time for you to arrive here. It's like, we've been waiting for you,
Nice.
Took you. And I ended up stumbling into a song through my looper. I just started looping. And that song, it changed everything. It kind of messed me all up. I was all emotional and crying and bawling. And but it was probably to that moment, to that date, the most eloquent thing I had worked on. And it was pulling me. I was like, oh, keep doing this, keep doing this. And so I ended up coming up with a song named 40 that was really beautiful and surprised me in terms of what I could create. And then it gave birth to like 4 or 5 other songs that were written in the same kind of style and modality, right? So looper pedal, bass line, cello, these interior parts, and then melody and improvisation over top. And so that turned into a concert in January of 2015, and invited family and friends out to that. But they liked it. Said, you should keep doing this. So I did another one in February. And then after I did the February one, it turned out like, maybe I should just do one of these every month of 2015. And that's essentially what I did. And 2 of those concerts ended up being outside of Atlanta. One was in DC and one was in London. And by the time I got to the last concert in December, life had changed. My understanding, my awareness of myself and of my voice had changed. My ability to kind of create had broadened. I'm not just a cellist in bands now. I'm like writing my own pieces. The way people saw me and kind of how they wanted to use me was also different now. And then maybe more than anything, I began to understand that the cello was a central voice that I had been developing for about 40 years, maybe 34 at that point, that I hadn't really focused on. And at that point, I started focusing on it, and it just continued to kind of take off and kind of skyrocket. And 10 years later, it's my primary mode of everything. It's how I make money. It is how I express myself. It is how I connect with my community and other artists. And it is, I think, it's continuing to lead me in a direction that I probably have always wanted to go in, but just never could have imagined. So that's the origin story.
Right.
Yeah, that's 6 to 49. I'll be 50 in December.
So why is it, agree or disagree, your story, your relationship with your instrument is so unique? All my life I've been absorbing stories about musicians. I'm just a music nerd, but rarely do you hear people talking about the relationship to their instrument. And now I'm just realizing this when I heard your story. That's odd. Or do you agree? Agree or disagree?
Well, it is. I mean, there's a lot about my story that's odd, so it depends upon who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about, how odd I go into it. But I really do kind of anthropomorphize my cello in a way.
Okay.
I talk about it as like a best friend that I never paid attention to when I was a child. And finally, like at 40, I kind of woke up and realized that, hey, it was talking to and through me.
Right.
It is a little different, but I happen to be in a community of people that really do find that at least art and the creation of music in particular is a kind of a transcendent experience, right? So that it comes through you rather than like you sit down to write a song. You know what I mean? It's not really that kind of a situation. It's not like I'm, I mean, I do that, right? People will commission me to write things, and it will be very intentional and focused. And in addition to that, there are these moments when I'm certain that I'm not the one writing, when I'm not in control, and it is a gift of whatever the cello talks to or works with internally. And I'm just grateful for that, and try to honor it. Sometimes it can get drowned out in the noise that business makes.
The noise that business makes. We were talking about that a little bit about that earlier.
Yeah, the noise that business makes about what it is you're supposed to play, and for what audience, and how do you, like, those are really important questions, and I get having a good answer for those questions. But I guess for me, the real challenge is remembering that at the center of it all was a developing, evolving relationship between me and my cello that was rooted in kind of a prayer. Because I guess the way that I started to develop a skill set to kind of improvise and write songs on the cello was improvising as a way of praying when I was having a bad day. Right. You know what I mean? So it was that skill set. I anthropomorphize my instrument quite a bit, and I feel that in so many ways it has been kind of like a sage for me, a sage that speaks a language that I'm learning, I used to be an English teacher. I talk a lot. Anyone who's watching this will see that I like words, use a lot of words, and I'm fairly comfortable using words. And fairly comfortable even expressing or exploring complicated or difficult things. Right. The cello is different. I cry significantly more frequently when I'm listening to or playing music. It often, I feel like something when I'm playing, when I discover something, it is saying something very important, way oftentimes more important than usually something I'm writing. It is a medium. I'm good enough to play and improvise, but I'm not so amazing where like it's all just math and numbers. You know what I mean? There's a like surrender and discovery for myself as well, right? So I'm generally never phoning it in when I'm playing, and the cello and that instrument in particular, I think, is driving this like cutting edge, bleeding edge exploration for me, both musically, artistically, personally, and leading me towards what I hope is a fate, destiny kind of thing. I hope I'm going where I'm supposed to be going, doing the things and doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing.
Just before we started off mic, we talked a little bit about the artist's journey and how some folks have this defining moment where they go from, hey, look how fantastic I am, to, oh, wow, I'm part of this cool club. I'm connecting with an artist. Not just being aware that there's an audience, which it comes naturally, I think. But that deeper, like a relational thing.
Yeah, I remember saying to you that, that there's a big decision for an artist of what to do with the gift of an audience's attention, right? And I'm not impressed. This is going to sound strange, and I don't know. I'm just going to say it. I'm not really all that moved by virtuosity. I recognize that there are brilliant, brilliant cellists and violinists and piano players and trumpet players who can do things at a technical level that is the highest for the human race, and I respect that. I just don't think. I think of music as a sport. It's not necessarily to see who can jump the farthest or the highest or the fastest. Like, that's not really what music is. I think music is, for me, very much about a kind of superpower communication that is richer and broader than whatever it is we're doing normally, right? And the measure of a really powerful artistic communication is whether it moves your audience, whether they walk away feeling as though they learned something about the piece or the composer or the performer or themselves or about life that stays with them. And sometimes I guess virtuosity can do that, right? The kind of the indomitable spirit of the human nature, right? Like we can do anything. There's that, but there's also like, I'm 50 years old and I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life still. Or there's, the ever popular, I know that my heart can be crushed in relationships and I halfway expect it. And even though I expect it, I'm never prepared for how bad this hurts, right? Like, those are the kinds of things that I think regular everyday language struggles to communicate. And that I think art, in particular music, does really, really well. So when you get an audience's attention, when you get that gift, I don't think you're really giving them something super special when you're saying, look at me, right? One, because at the end of the day, we put someone on the moon, right? Like there's an internet, you know what I mean? We live in the future. We have flying cars, essentially, you know what I mean? Like, this is the Jetsons. So I don't know that I am still like, oh my God, humans are so amazing. And I even think that a lot of the classical works that were written for violin or cello or piano were written at a time where the human community that was observing that art was still discovering, well, what are humans capable of? What can we imagine? Like, and these pieces were these conceptual sensory cathedrals that were being built, right? And the cathedral, the point of the cathedral is not just to kind of be a home for worship, but it's to like impress upon the worshipers the grandeur of that which they're worshiping, right? So yes, the virtuosity of these performances were the abstract versions of that. But you can travel around the world and go see the cathedrals. You know the history. We have satellites. We have thousands of satellites orbiting Earth and like transmitting light from here to the other side of the globe in a second, right? The idea of humans can do anything is cool, but we've hit that note. We haven't answered the questions about what are we doing here, and what's it supposed to feel like. And how am I supposed to relate to you, or to myself, or to my daughter, or to my son, or to my wife, or to my dad? What does it mean to be good? And how does that live alongside of the horrible things that I know I've done, right? Like, those are still questions I think that not only are we still asking, but when we get the gift of an answer to one of those questions in the form of a play or a song or an album, oh gosh, it's so meaningful. And I'll speak for myself. I find it so meaningful. I've seen A Raisin in the Sun, I don't know how many times, either on TV or in person. I even acted in a high school version of it. But my wife and I went to go see A Raisin in the Sun because a buddy of mine, a colleague, is in it, and he was amazing. He was wonderful. But again, just those questions of like Walter Lee trying to figure out how to grow into his manhood and take care of his family, and the specter of his recently deceased father and that insurance check, and racism and dignity and the complications of a marriage with a woman who really just wants him to be present, but all he can think about is how he's gonna get this money. And I bawled. Like, I spent the third of the play just crying, because while I was introduced to this play when I was 17, I had no idea really what those questions were. I couldn't have. And now I'm 50 with my own family, trying to provide, wanting to thrive rather than just survive. And the way that Lorraine Hansberry, that's not Angela Lansbury, Lorraine Hansberry.
I better she would.
Yeah, not very sure. Lorraine Hansberry captured those questions, even just from a male protagonist, a middle-aged male protagonist. So moving, like so moving. That, for me, is the point. That's the point of the song. That's the point of the performance. That's the point of the album. That's the point of the concert, right?
Can you trace this back to your big turning point at 40, or were you already
Yes.
open to this before?
Maybe not. I mean, I think I was starting to feel that way. Like, I was traveling around. So the last person I performed with was a woman named Callahan, English born, but here in the States. And I did some really cool tours here in the States and in England with her. And then there were these moments when I would play a piece that she wrote, but there's a cello part that's just so moving, or like in the relationship between her guitar and the cello, and it just would, would make me kind of cry or a little bit. But when I first started exploring writing music on my cello, I knew I had something I wanted to share with people because of that feeling, that feeling which often showed up because I started crying, right? And the crying is usually because I think I've stumbled onto something that's so like eloquent and insightful. Not insightful in, I know something that you don't, but insightful in the sense that like this answers a question that I didn't know I was asking, And so for me, that is the little lightning in a bottle that I am excited about. And that's what I hope to share with my audiences. There's also more going on my shows, right? So there's some laughter, there's some fun, there's some crowd interaction, and I hope that there are these moments of tenderness and vulnerability and, love or fear or growth that get at that feeling and try to create that feeling for my audience. So yeah, and there's a little implicit hidden joke in my name, OkCello. When I first started calling myself OkCello, people say, "You're better than OK." And I was like, well, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But I want to downplay that. Like, I don't want to, that's the thing that's a little bit different about classical instruments. It's about virtuosity, right? It's about Yo-Yo Ma or Emanuel Ax or Joshua Bell or, it's about the Michael Jordans of the form. But if there's anything I think I'm really moved by with American music, particularly like blues, rock and roll, spirituals, it's the music of like everyday people, and they are leaning on their music not as some kind of like status distinguisher, but as something that helps them to get through the day.
Now, do you feel like you're pretty well grounded in this, or do you have to remind yourself, okay, don't get too full of myself?
A little bit of both, maybe. When I'm honest and I sit down and play, that's the only thing that comes out. I spend a lot of time planning and trying to do the entrepreneurial thing, which I have to. And, I don't want to lament, right? I don't want to say, oh my God, my life is so hard, because there are a lot of really wonderful things about it, but that is a hard part of life. And I wish I could spend more of that time on my instrument. And when I sit down in front of my instrument and I really have a good practice or connection session, it's almost always about, oh my God, that moved me, or oh my God, that's the thing that I want to share with people, or that reminded me why I do this, or that humbled me, or that made me realize that it doesn't matter, how big the audience is or how much you're getting paid for the gig. What matters is, did you actually connect? Those are the things I think that matter maybe the most. And I'm reminded of those things most times when I'm at my instrument. So that's the other part about, anthropomorphizing my cello. I think I do really see it as this kind of sage presence. And it has the capacity to kind of check me sometimes when I get distracted. And I'm grateful for it.
So you do a lot of speaking engagements.
Yeah.
So obviously talking not just to creative people. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice to non-creative people about finding their thing, about finding their voice, and about even practicing creativity or art, even if it's not a career path?
Yeah. I'm at the opposite end of a spectrum, I think. I think there are some other career choices I could have made that would have more firmly planted me on the side of the spectrum that's about like planning and being intentional and being practical and being a realist, right? It's hard to be those things and an open artist, although there are, right, people who are able to do that. What I will say is that the thing that has perhaps been the most important skill that I'm continuing to develop, but that also supports my artistry, is listening. And really, really listening and responding, right? And I think that at the end of the day is 70% of the work of improvisation. Improvisation isn't necessarily having a sense of where you want to go and just going there. I think improvisation is being responsive to your world. There's nothing more frustrating sometimes in watching the debates and someone asks a candidate a question and they answer the question that they want to answer, right? That's not improvisation. It's loosely related to the question that you're asking. I'm going to deliver this answer. Being a good improviser, being a good artist, I think, is really being sensitive to the question that's being asked and responding, right? And so sometimes the question that's being asked is the song. Sometimes the question that's being asked is the circumstance. Like, here, I'm at this, I'm on a boat playing for these folks. Why are we here? What's the reason why you would be wanting to listen to a cello right now? Or I'm playing at a memorial. Like, so what's the question? How am I able to perform something that celebrates the dignity of this recently passed or deceased person? I think that is a skill that we actually sometimes get worse at the older we get, because I think the things that life requires from us are often already prepackaged, right? You can go get this, financial plan, or you can go get this. There's a training at your job. I want you to do it exactly this way and not at all. And so in some ways, we don't quite have to listen as much. We don't quite have to listen to our partners. I mean, I think this is some of the difficulty of marriages after a while. Like, you stop listening to the person, right? Because you feel like you've heard everything that they have to say, or it's said in the same way, but it's the listening, right? It is absolutely the listening that makes everything fresh and new. It is absolutely the listening that gives you the question worth answering. It is absolutely the listening that gives you the invitation towards discovery. A person who isn't a professional artist, who is learning an instrument or developing a relationship with an instrument, is usually at a really sweet moment of interaction with that instrument, because the work is listening. It's all listening, right? In order to get good at something, you're listening to your hands and your ears, and you're listening to the instrument, and you're listening to whether it's in tune, and you're listening to the tone that you make, and you're trying to see if what's on the page, if you're reading, sounds like what you've read, right? Like, the listening is everything.
Being a student,
being curious. And then I think the second part of it is being responsive, right? Like, that's a big part of improvisation. This is where the room is going. Oh, I want to go there with the room. Or this is where my heart is going. I want to go where my heart is going. Or this is the question that's being asked, and I wasn't even thinking about this question before this moment, this artistic moment. How do I respond to that, right? Listening and responding are really, really, really important aspects of the artistic process. And I think both for a person who isn't a professional artist, I think those are really important
life skills.
and what's the word I'm looking for? Life skills and values. Really important values that should inform how you approach learning the instrument. But I think they're really important values, period. I think deep listening is always going to be valuable, especially if the work is situated in relationships. So my recommendation to the adult who is just learning, or it's not learning, but is, has a relationship with the instrument that isn't professional, isn't necessarily what feeds them, kind of thing, that listening and responding is massive. But just out in the world, even if you don't consider yourself creative or an artist, I think the work of listening and responding, really, really listening, and then being courageous enough to have a genuine response to that question is is where the magic is.
And the magic of creating something
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So getting back to creating things, a lot is required of a working artist to build your sandbox, to have your business to support that.
Yeah.
And it takes up so much time, the marketing
yeah.
of it, the business side.
Yeah.
How do you balance the business, the grown-up stuff, with all the artistic play stuff?
Depends on the day, but not always well. There is a pendulum swing to all of it. There's a rhythm. There's sometimes when you're very focused on the business part. And I actually played a concert at the High with T.C. Carson a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it was a week ago. I don't know how long ago it was. And that was a good 4 days of rehearsal and long rehearsal. And my focus for that week was all on music. And I haven't quite had that, and it was a special thing, not just because we were developing something together, but it was a special thing because before rehearsal, I would sit down and play and practice and things would come out of it. And then after rehearsal, I'd be at my instrument and I would play and things would come out of it. There are things that I probably will develop into pieces at some point because of the fact that I got an opportunity for about 4 days just to be all about my instrument. Not quite the same this week. This week is a little bit different. I do have some artistic work to do, but I also have some, business work to do. And you just kind of have to do the job that requires doing, And there are a lot of jobs in the entrepreneurial world that require doing all the time. So there's definitely the marketing. The other part, the marketing is the piece that comes after the thing. So you have the thing. The thing is the concert, the album, the whatever. There's a place of business before the thing, which is how do I create new things? Some of it is just sitting and creating, but some of it is pitching. Some of it is dreaming and imagining and going to people and saying, hey, I've got this idea. I'd like to imagine a collaboration between the two of us. So there's a lot of dreaming. And actually, this is the area of creativity that I don't think artists are as good at. And I think, I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I think I'm able to have a life as a cellist, which is not a super common thing outside of an orchestra or some kind of institution, because of the fact that I'm constantly dreaming and pitching. I'm constantly picking up the phone and saying, hey, I'd love to do this at your university, or maybe we should do this, or trying to network with people who might have a need for an articulation of an idea or a concept, but outside of the normal way that it's communicated.
Did you get that from your screenwriting?
I did. Actually, I got that from the pitch of trying to make a movie. There's a decent amount of sales. The sales is kind of a dirty word sometimes, right? But at the end of the day, I think being able to kind of put an idea in someone else's mind.
Inception.
Right? And have that flourish outside of you is the most important part of the business part, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what greenlights things, right? How have I inspired you to consider doing something different? And just to be honest, right? I'm not Stevie Wonder or Jay-Z or I don't know. I'm not an obvious performer. I play the cello. I don't sing. There are no words, and I loop. There's just not a lot of people doing it. And so, maybe if I were an amazing singer-songwriter that played piano and was informed or inspired by Stevie Wonder, it would have been easier sell. Maybe if I were an Atlanta trap rapper, you know what I mean? I had a slightly different angle, but what I did was, it might be an easier sell because there's a context for it, right? There's just really not a context for what it is that I do. So much of it is dreaming and pitching.
And in pitching, the failure rate is so high. How do you keep that energy up? What's the self-care look like so you can keep, I'm going to go back at this?
I mean, not going back at it is a privilege that I don't have. Like I've got a mortgage and family and children and I think more than that, it feels really good to take something from concept to fruition, you know? And I am chasing that feeling a lot of times, right? If there is anything I like on the business side, it is dreaming up something that didn't exist and getting a chance to do it. That's exciting. It is affirming in every possible way. It's affirming artistically, it's affirming, financially, it's affirming in terms of like just the business network, like here's a new relationship that I have with someone that I didn't have before. And it's affirming in this kind of like, you can do this way, I'm not daunted by the idea of creating songs or writing. Like I'm also a writer or the creative part isn't easy, but like there's an inevitability to it that's no longer a faith for me. I know a song is gonna come. I know lyrics. That it comes. It will come at some point. Not that I necessarily will deliver it. Something will happen. It will come. I don't have that confidence yet with business. So every time there's this happened and it wasn't even a thing 2 months ago, it's like oh my gosh. It works. It works. It can work, So that for me is the piece of advice I would give artists, be bold enough to share your work and be brave enough to dream up things that don't yet exist and courageous enough to kind of step into that unknown and make it a reality.
Wow, that's brilliant. I don't think we can get better than that. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Jack. I really appreciate it. It's been a good time.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool.
And that was OkCello. Look out for him in a performance near you. As I record this, I am days away from seeing him live for the first time at Atlanta's historic Oakland Cemetery. Should be very worthwhile. His new album, Funny How Things Work Out, is due in June. His previous music, which you heard earlier in the episode, is available to stream in the usual places. You can also keep up with him on the socials. His handle is simply OkCello. Meanwhile, I hope that each of you listening out there finds time to be a student of something that enriches you in some way. Thank you for your gift of attention. I now release you to the remainder of your day. As always, please follow Grind and Flow on your favorite podcast app, as well as Instagram and YouTube. See ya.